Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to the 7th edition of the Levitum Knot. And today I'm Arvi, and today I'll be talking about foosball strategy. A little bit of strategy, a little bit of tactics, a little bit of just a few of the different plays involved. Um, I've been playing foosball for a while. I'm a big fan of soccer, and I think went from there to table soccer. Ended up playing at a couple of startups that I was involved in the valley, where we had a foosball table around the corner, and people would congregate at the foosball table every Friday evening for a few beers and just end up playing. And it was just a nice recreational, social way to get to know people and have some fun. But I'm super competitive, and I ended up playing with a lot of people who were super competitive and improving my skills, and um, picked up some different strategies for playing foosball. I'm not one of the best that's out there, but I think I'm fairly good. And just thought it'd be fun to share some of this with you guys um, and bounce off ideas. Foosball is obviously inspired by table soccer, by soccer itself, right? But there's a number of constraints just since you've got your men on the rods. So they're fixed with respect to movement. You can't move the guys up forward and back. And with respect to the ball's movement, the range of motion is limited because you can't, for instance, have the goalie easily pass a ball up front since you're limited, since aerial coverage is a little limited. But so with respect to the formations, it's mostly fixed with one goalie at the back, and then you've got the next line of defense, which is two guys, and then you've got the the next line right after would be a series of three offense guys. So in other words, your formation is 1, 2, 5, and 3. 1, 2, 5, 3. Okay, so it's a total of 11. And 2, 5, 3 is really the main stay of it. Two guys being the defenders, 5 being in the center, and you've got the 3 guys in offense. And so, there's certain strategies that make a lot more sense here in foosball if you're playing. If you're playing just for fun, it doesn't really matter. You're out there just to hit the ball out and have a little bit of fun. But and you end up either having a strategy based on whom you're playing with in case you're playing doubles, or the nature of your own game if you're playing singles. And if it's doubles, typically you try to figure out whether your partner is better at offense or better at defense, and based on that, try to align yourself to see what your gameplay may be. So some of these are slightly contrived, and I'll be the first to admit it, but I'll walk you through a few of the different strategies as I see them. And let me just quickly share the screen off of my phone. Let me know if you guys can see it. Do you guys see it?
Yeah, right.
Hey, so the first broad one, right, is just possession, right? It's not very different from football that way. Your objective here is to keep the ball and have total control of the game by just retaining the ball as much as you can. It ends up frustrating your opponent. So from a more tactical perspective, the important thing here is just having really good ball control and passing skills, right? So the ability to sort of slow down the pace of the game and then pass the ball carefully from your guys in the back to the guys in the middle. And then the 5-rod play then starts to become really important. And then the 5-rod in the middle, passing that on to your offense and keeping the ball through and through. And even when your offense tries to score, trying to ensure that you can rebound the ball quickly enough to keep ball in play and in control. And then your opposing team's offense starts to get a little frustrated. Their defense starts to feel like they're being pressured a little more, and they start to take a few more risks that start to cause some problems. So if you've got a play where you've got if you're got good ball control, this is ideally the strategy that you'd want to adopt. Now, sort of on the flip side, right? Often you end up playing with people whose ball control and skills at possession and control are maybe just way better than yours. And if you find that your strategy against them isn't working, what I've seen work well for some people, and this is something that I used to use early on, is just speed. And if your hand-eye coordination is better than the other player, then just be a speed demon, right? So try to get the ball out as fast as possible. So you're changing the pace of play completely. So it breaks the rhythm of your opponent. Since they're used to playing slightly more slower control play, getting the ball up from the back, up to the front, but by changing the play, by moving the ball a lot faster and playing it on the move, if you will, In other words, when the ball is moving around, don't wait to stop the ball and then hit it. Hit it while it's moving, but try to get the right angles to get the ball in play and moving along really fast. So you could be a speed demon, move the ball really quickly, and if you get the right angles, you could really unsettle your opponent by changing the way the game is being played. So this is an effective play for someone who prefers playing a little slower, having ball control. This is obviously a little challenging to play on a sustained basis, so you'd probably want to choose the opponents against whom this might work well. Now the third one, which is largely what I think I end up doing, is I think I end up doing a mix of A and C, is a bit of a defensive counterattack. I think I often end up playing defense when I'm playing with someone who's not as good at offense. So in those modes, I play defense, but I'm constantly looking for opportunities where, while the other person is attacking, I quickly turn the defensive situation around to an attacking situation. So I try to quickly grab the ball and then quickly turn it around to score. And this is quite effective because on one hand, you're securing your base by being defensive, but you're also quickly turning around play very fast into an attacking mode. I found this to be a good way of turning around points very quickly. I think the analogy that I draw from is in tennis, where you've got a lot of good counter punchers with the ball, like Andy Murray or Djokovic, who move very quickly from being in a defensive situation to being in offense. And I think the same thing can apply pretty well here. So the next one around is what I call triple threat. This is part strategy. It's a little more tactical in some ways. But I think where it's relevant is when you start to play against people who are a little more seasoned, some of the traditional modes don't always apply as easily. And in some of those situations, what I found to work, and I'll just hang on just a second while I rotate my screen here. Do you guys see this okay? Can someone just confirm you're seeing it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the mode where you, at any point in time in the game, you look to try to have more than one or two options of shots that you could play. So this requires a fair amount of work on your technique and skills, but it opens out multiple combinations of threats that you could offer. So I call it a triple threat, where, for instance, if your guy is out here and this is your rod, then the most typical shot most people would try is sort of a straight shot, moving the ball a little bit and then going for a straight shot to the near post, right? Or somewhere out here, right? Now, while this works, right, after a little while, good opponents will figure out the patterns here. So it becomes important to sort of mix it up a little bit. And if you have a triple threat, right, it gets really hard because at various points in the game, you have multiple ways in which you could shoot. And so there are three possible shots you have here. One is what I'm calling a bank shot, which is going off the wall. So getting the right angle of this bank to shoot to the near post, right here, right? And then the second is the regular straight shot, which essentially goes straight down the middle towards the goal. And the third one is a push, where you push the ball up towards the center out here, and then shoot it straight down towards the far end of the post. And where this ends up being effective, right, is typically the guys out there won't coordinate as much between their offense and defense. So the guy on offense will mostly try to get his guy in front of your guy. The guy at the defense will usually cover only one of the two corners. He'll either cover this far one or the near one. And once you spot the pattern with respect to how he's moving his guys, with a triple threat, right, you can really unsettle them because there's no way they can easily cover for them. And it'll mix it up enough that it'll provide you enough options and flexibility, and it'll also throw them off quite a bit. So yeah, that's on triple threat. Let me quickly get back here and rotate this. Go. Oops. Okay. So the other interesting play that works well with slightly more advanced players is what I call the pass of death. It's actually named after a guy named Kevin Van Hoosen who used to play the shot, and he was unbelievably good at it. And one of the main things around the pass of death, right, is when you're playing against good players, a lot of success in the game comes down to your midfield, and controlling your midfield becomes really important. So the thing is, in foosball, it's a fixed setting, right? Because you can't change those formations. There are five guys right down the middle. So winning the five-man game becomes really important for offense. So this requires really good passing skills. So with the passing skills too, right, typically people resort to triple play. So you try to do a pass off the bank, you try to do a straight pass, or you go for an angle pass where what happens is because the five guys, the guy runs out of room where he can move his rod. Now, what most people end up doing though is they just try to use a five rod to either shoot at the goal, which doesn't really work well with advanced players, or you try to use it to pass to your three man up front. Now, the tricky thing is that's not always enough because your opponents can quickly, wisen up to that, and the fire-out game can get quite intense. So I'll walk you through how I've seen the pass of death work. I'm not the best at it, but I think it's super effective. So I'll just try to show you guys how I've seen it work well. Oops, let me get this straightened out. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. What you're seeing here is, so the rods, I've sort of highlighted the rods here with the motion of the ball. You see the goal here on the right, and this is a pass from the five rod to the three rod into the goal. Okay, so one of the important things that's happening here is from the five rod, you've got to kind of mix that up a little bit where once in a while you've got shots going off the bank or trying to pass it down the other way. But employ this pass of death and it can really unsettle them. It's really hard for them to stop this if you can get it right and get it often enough, which is a quick pass from the five guy to the three guy, where the three guy is waiting for the ball and then shoots it in where he has typically at least one or two angles available. He can either shoot this way or the other way. So it's called the pass of death because the chances of stopping this require a lot of coordination at their end between their offense and defense. Because remember, right, the five rod at there is being coordinated by one of their offensive guys, while they've got the defender out here. So for them, it's hard to coordinate between these two. But you own these two rods, right? So you've got a lot more coordination. So if you can get this movement smooth and get those angles right, this is a really powerful approach to get past a number of players and to mix it up quite a bit for some powerful offense. So two key things end up being important here: really good passing from the five rod to the three rod, and getting those right angles. Because you're not stopping the ball here, you're not catching the ball. You're essentially kicking the ball in while it's on the go. So super powerful, but requires some skill to sort of work through with that. I think the only other thing I'd say is, you'd often be up against people who are way better than you, right? And you need to ensure that you've got a bread and butter play which you can depend on. And to me, that's sort of your fallback strategy. It's a plan where you know that if things go bad, you could fall back on a certain battle of attrition, if you will, or a certain play which will keep you in the game long.
Arvind, you are muted.
Oh, damn. Sorry about that. Not sure how much. What was the last thing you guys heard?
Last three lines, I guess.
Oh,
On
okay,
the
cool.
bread and butter.
Yes, it's the bread and butter is sort of like a fallback strategy, right? Because no matter what, you'll end up playing people who are better than you, or will be adopting a certain strategy or tactics at a point where you're unable to handle it. So it's important to ensure that your game has a certain way in which you can fall back. You have a fallback strategy which is solid. It could be a couple of shots which you know that no matter whom you're playing against, 1 in 4 or 5 times you'll get it right. It could be a defensive strategy where you know that somehow you can stranglehold the game, slow them down until you can figure out a way. But you've got to have this bread and butter part worked out because it'll really hold you. I mean, it'll help you at times when you're in unknown territory. and you need to fall back on something where things that you're used to aren't working out. And you need a little more time to figure out what the patterns in the other person's game are, so that you can then adapt from there. So this really depends on each individual, but I think it's important to have this fallback plan and make sure that's very clear and that this is coordinated between you and your partner, so that when all hell breaks loose, you know that, what, here's what we'll do, and we'll stick to this plan, because that's your bread and butter plan that you'll hold ground with and try a few things out. Yeah, so with that, right, I'll dive into a few sort of more tactical things that you end up doing in foosball, things which I think are quite important. Some of these are a little harder to go through in detail, over a screen share on a Hangout. But one of them, right, which I think is important, which I don't think a lot of people do, is setting the pace of the game to a pace that you're comfortable with. And I think this makes a big difference because people play at different speeds. And it's good for you to know the speeds at which you're most comfortable with and the speeds at which your opponent isn't. And once you sense that, try and move him out of his comfort zone and set it into a pace where you're comfortable. So right at the start, often what I either do is I try to play fast or I try to play really slow. And I try to get a sense of just how the opponent is responding. So the second point here is sort of watching the opponent's patterns, which is really observe as the ball moves up and down across the field. There are typically patterns where you see their defense move their rods along up and down. And observing those patterns will give you a sense of sort of what's working there, where you might have their opponent defense typically covering only the near corners. So in other words, if you move your guy from top to bottom, he'll also move from top to bottom. Some of the other guys, the defenders, will just stay put and try to cover the middle as much as they can, and then try to watch for a shot. So observe these patterns because they'll give you a few cues about what you could do. Passing skills are big. There's triple play, different ways of passing. Improving this and controlling that is really key, especially in the middle, in the middle ground, since that's where some of the better games between advanced players, especially, get won. Because it's between those five rods who controls the games, gets them into the offensive part. So linked to the passing and the five rods, right, is serving and shooting. So this is the one advantage you have in foosball, where once you have the ball in your hand, when you're serving, ensure that you get a serve in which gets the ball to you. There's no reason to lose this. If you're serving and letting the ball go to your opponent, you're losing control of that right there, right? So this is fairly fundamental, just ensuring that when you're serving, that the ball always ends up with you. So this is slightly contrived. I'll just try to show this to you guys as much as I can here. But this is an example of how to do a push in foosball. So you'll end up hearing these terms often: the push, the pull, and the snake. So these are three common names of shots that are fairly popular. And I'll try to just explain the push because it's relatively simple enough, for beginners to pick up. And your objective here, assuming that you're starting at this point here where you have this, is to sort of push the ball along and then to lift your guy up and then strike. Okay? So your objective is to push the ball along up and then lift your guy up and then strike. So the reason this works is typically your opponent's defenders will be lined up right in front of where you are. And if you can do this briskly enough, quickly enough, you can essentially displace the ball a little bit and then find a gap and score. So to break this down a little further, right, the first part is the push, where your ball and the guy are right in the same line and essentially just pushing the ball along. So the ball is ahead of you moving forward. The second step is the lift, where once you push the ball, you essentially tilt your guy so the guy is up in the air, and then you start to move forward so that your guy essentially crosses over to be in the same line as the ball. So you push, you lift, you cross over, and then you strike. It's slightly hard, I think, to convey it this way, but I think you guys might get the rough gist of it. This is one of, probably, I would say this is one of probably one of the simplest shots to start with. And once you get the push right, it's easy to move on to the pull or the snake and some of the other shots that are relevant. And the other nice thing with the push is you could do it when you're on offense, and you could use it while you're on defense as well. So that's the quick summary of just some of the different things that I wanted to cover off. I also have a little whiteboard here, so if you want to cover off any other plays, I can do that. But I wanted to quickly pause and just see if people had any questions. Hey, Srichand, great you could join. Looks like you're in from Chennai. Okay, you're on chat. All right.
Yeah.
And Arun, is it fine?
Just got to join. Whoa, you put some really good research into this.
No, not research. Just things that I did this morning. Just quickly jotted down. So.
But I think I got what you said. As in, so I've just played football a bunch of times, and I usually point right opposite to the five dot guy. So as in that's the default strategy. But what he said is right. As in I should see where the shot is coming, not where the other opponent's players are, which is bad because that's evident if there's a player who knows what he's doing, he can quickly figure out that what I'm doing is just placing my opponents next to him instead of actually looking for a shot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the other thing too is just on offense too, right? It's a very simple thing, which is defending on offense, where you tilt your guys so that even your offensive guys are playing defense, right? They're stopping the ball up front, and you're also rebounding because your role is also as a rebounder, so that in case your defense guy hits the ball somewhere up front, it rebounds, ricochets off the ball. You're constantly also in rebound mode where you're trying to catch the ball if it rebounds off any other balls. Just like in basketball or similar sports where you can do that.
I think I want to work on my bank shots and the pass of death.
Yeah, both are like phenomenally powerful. Bank, I mean, not a lot of people use the bank, and you can get the bank angles well. It's not a hard shot, and it really mixes things up. Pass at death requires a lot of work, and I'm not great at it, but it's incredibly powerful when it works. I have seen Vishnu do it a few times. Vishnu, I've seen you do this a few times, right? Make the pass and then hit it with some angles. I think it's quite powerful.
Yeah, but you need to see what the defense is doing. Really, if the rod moves too fast, then the pass gets to connect. Then it doesn't work. Very, really fast. This has to connect. This pass it, tap it.
Cool. Anything else you guys want to share about what strategies or approaches you use?
Yeah, I think I've been playing without really using any of the above strategies. I've just been let the ball go. I didn't know there was an exact science to all of it. But this has been really helpful. So you know what? This is going to better my game next time.
Sounds good, man. No, some of it is a little contrived too, right? I'm just trying to make it as Raj here would call it, an unscience out of it. So a little bit of that. But to some extent, this is, I think, also some of the approaches I use to pretty much any game I play. So I think some of that just comes from that. So.
Yeah, so Arvi, yours is definitely a very science approach. The way you put together all of these and the way you play, right? I mean, you're pretty much winning everything. So my unscience approach is sort of randomly move everything at high speeds, hoping that something catches the ball and goes into the goal.
Yeah.
So
that would
be
like a speed demon approach too, but yeah.
Okay, speed demon, but I think speed demon sounds good. It's like extremely as fast as I can. I just keep like pushing things. Unfortunately, I don't see the ball when I do that.
So. No, I really think it's muscle memory and training your brain to do something, because it's something as simple as catching a ball, right? Your hand has to coordinate with your brain, and if you miss it, then your hand course corrects based on the speed of the ball. I mean, in the third or fourth time, you are able to catch the ball. So it's something like that. You have to course correct every time. Have your players, get the ball right, pass the ball right, shoot. Well, it's all about muscle memory, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Arvi, is sort of it's probably, I mean, if you call it a sport, it's probably it requires one of the fastest sort of reaction times, right? If you want to be precise, because I mean, compared to you take any other sport, right? You have some fraction of a second. This is like a fraction of a second, right? Like one of the plays that you showed where you push it to the next attacker on the side by side and lift and hit is like so precise and it's like so fast, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, a lot of side benefits of this, right? Especially for many of us who have sedentary jobs. The nice thing about just playing one of these once in a while, if you don't get out and play other sports, is, you have a bit of one. It helps you avoid carpal tunnel syndrome, both ping pong and foosball. So, just the wrist flexibility that it gives you is a side health benefit, or just loosening up that wrist a bit. So, just loosening up the wrist helps because with repetitive stress injury, with being at keyboards, it helps that. And the hand-eye coordination just gives your eyes a bit of a break too with doing something that's staring at something that's fixed on the screen. Got those benefits too. Hey, cool guys, thanks for joining. Hope this is useful and hope you enjoy the rest of your week. So.
Hey, thanks, Arvi. This was great fun. Really nice, fun way of showing things too. So, I mean, I felt like I was in one of those sports team things where they draw stuff, the plays on paper, and sort of the team looks over, and so really, really cool. Probably very close to the way it's done in sports, right? And
yeah.
Hey, thanks, Avi. That was really informative and a lot of new strategies to play.
Next time we go monkey bar, we'll try it. All right, see you guys.
All right.
Thanks for joining, Srichand. Bye.
Thanks.